all these programs that we're talking about that they're trying to stop, they're going to need Congress to change a lot of that. They're going to need to make new rules. It's not going to be that. It's not as straightforward as a stroke of a pen.
Hello and welcome back to the Plugged In Podcast, a weekly news show all about the future of transportation. I'm Patrick George, editor-in-chief of InsideEvs.
And I'm Tim Levin, senior reporter at InsideEvs. We've got a lot to dig into this week, mainly the fact that we have a new president who is no friend to EVs, and we're all trying to figure out what that means. How's it going, Patrick? I feel like this is one of those weeks where there's just like way too much news to deal with for our small team, probably for a big organization too, but like it has just been crazy this week. How are you feeling?
It has been crazy, like since this year started. Like the InsideEvs team of reporters and editors is a small but dedicated and highly effective one. But like this has been an exercise in calling your shots, and it's kind of why I hope everybody rested up here over the holidays, because like we're in for a crazy year. It started with CES for us, all of the new products and technologies coming to market. And now we have a new government in the United States and a new / returning president with a very different take on like the auto industry and the electric vehicle race than his predecessor did. And we're all kind of trying to figure out every day, like what it means, what President Trump can do, what he cannot do, what he's saying, what he's, not capable of doing. I don't know. It's a lot. It's a game of whack-a-mole. And that was what it was like covering the auto industry in his first term too, because every now and then he would just say stuff like, I see lots of BMWs in New York, but no Cadillacs in Germany. Like total trade blockade on the EU. 5 question marks, and then you would call your BMW contact to see like for comment, and they would just be crying on the phone. So it's an interesting time, and we're sorting it all out. But do you want to kick us off with some of the things that we've been looking into as a team this week, Tim?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like somehow, even though we knew exactly what day he would be sworn in for months, and basically knew like what he wanted to do and was planning to do, this still caught me off guard. I feel like, just like with the amount of stuff. So the first day, on Monday, after he was sworn in, Trump signed a whole bunch of executive orders reversing Biden's executive orders. And then the one that kind of is most relevant to us and to EVs is this one titled Unleashing American Energy, which aims to do a bunch of things, including ending the quote-unquote EV mandate, which is something that we'll get into. It doesn't really exist. It's not really an EV mandate, but we know kind of what he means there. It's EPA emissions rules. Ending the waiver that California has to set its own emissions rules, quote-unquote, considering deleting subsidies for EVs, a whole bunch of measures aimed at basically reversing, Biden's policies, stopping funding for charging, that sort of thing.
I'll set the table stakes here, I think, in 2 ways. One, it was never a mandate. It was like a sort of informal target the Biden White House had to make 50% of new cars be electric by 2030, and for it to go up there through the 2030s. So just kind of increase the number of electric cars on the market over the next decade and a half. Kind of with the ultimate goal of like being a primarily electric market for climate reasons. And it wasn't a binding mandate, obviously. It was just tightening the rules that have always been in place. But it was called a mandate, and people kind of lost their minds over that. The second thing is, I think you and I both have heard from friends, family members, civilians, just casual shoppers, like, so is the EV thing dead? Is it not going to happen now? It's like, no, not at all. Like, regulations that the U.S. government were implementing were pushing more EVs and pushing wider adoption. So were the tax credits. Certainly, that stuff could slow down, but like for a billion reasons, including just where the global car market's going and what China is doing and just how everything is moving towards electrification, EVs and hybrids. This is a speed bump at best, like a slowdown at best. And we're not even sure he can do all the stuff that he's talking about here. Let's let the man speak in his own words, and we're going to tune into what President Trump said about electric vehicles in his inaugural address.
With my actions today, we will end the Green New Deal and we will revoke the electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto industry and keeping my sacred pledge to our great American auto workers. In other words, you'll be able to buy the car of your choice. We will build automobiles in America again at a rate that nobody could have dreamt possible just a few years ago. And thank you to the auto workers of our nation for your inspiring vote of confidence. We did tremendously with their vote. I will immediately begin the overhaul of our trade system to protect American workers and families. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens.
Interesting remarks from the president. I take a lot of issue, like just from a factual sense with what he said there. Like, I think, first of all,
Yeah.
One beef I have with this, like, it's about customer choice and, the power of letting consumers choose. It's like, you kind of only have the illusion of choice when you buy a new car, right? Like, you can't get that sedan I mentioned with a V8 anymore. Like, nobody makes a manual transmission car. There's very few, versus where there were even a few years ago. If you want like a subcompact, cheap, affordable Ford, go buy something used because they don't make the Fiesta or the Focus anymore. GM doesn't make like a small, cheap pickup truck like the old S10. Like, you get what they choose to make based on what their profits are going to be. Like, they kind of act like they're some public utility all the time, but they're really not. And so I guess we draw the line on like what powers the car or something, but really you have kind of a false choice at best. And I know that's driven you nuts, that kind of cop-out statement before, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that especially kind of as EV growth has been slowing, basically every automaker who isn't one that only makes EVs, like Tesla, everybody's like, we're driven by consumer demand. We're driven by choice. We'll produce what the people want. And it's like, well, there's what the people want, and there's what you choose to make for them. And then there's also the added layer of like, too bad. Like, this change is happening regardless because it needs to, because cars are an enormous source of emissions. And so if the government is pushing you to make those over something that, produces a lot of greenhouse gases, like, too bad. That's in their right. And that's kind of, we got to do it. We got to do it for climate change. And also just to put a finer point on it. And I know I don't want to like beat a dead horse here, but the Trump campaign was really adept at pushing this EV mandate and this like they're forcing you to buy an EV kind of language, and you can hear it in his remarks, like about you'll be able to buy the car of your choice, and it's like you'll always be able to buy the car of your choice.
Yeah.
It's gonna slowly, the regulations are gonna slowly push automakers to sell more and more EVs, but like today, nobody's telling you what you can and can't buy. You can buy whatever you want.
Yeah. I personally can't buy the car of my choice, which would probably be like a Porsche Taycan Turbo S, because I am poor.
Yeah.
But that's the main barrier to that one. No, it's like I've said on here before, like, we are not a partisan site. This is not a partisan podcast. I think just looking at the facts in the industry and the people we talk to, I kind of take factual issues with some of these plans. Protecting America from China and not just like handing everything over to China. Well, okay, right. Well, the IRA is building battery plants in America. For one, he's talking about ending, California and the dozen or so other states that follow their emissions rules, ending their power to do that. Well, that's going to be some lawsuits right there. You've got all of the red and purple state governors who are getting huge investments in their states to build electric vehicle factories and hybrid factories. By the way, those battery plants, like they need to make batteries for hybrids too. And I think a reason that like General Motors doesn't have a lot of hybrids right now, or doesn't sell any hybrids right now, Volkswagen also, like I'm nearly certain it's because all of those materials are tied up in China, and they would be sanctioned to hell and back if they tried to sell them here, or hit with tariffs or fees or something. So we've got to build out a battery infrastructure in America, like that benefits our energy independence, that benefits our jobs, that benefits the future of transportation. So the IRA was doing a lot of that stuff. It was far from perfect, but like there were things happening that like I feel like Trump wants to do that he would be wise to keep in place when it comes to cars. I think one of the things that I find most concerning is what could happen to EV charger funding. This is something that you've been looking into with your reporting lately, Tim. Like, what's the read on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and just to like back up for a second, I wanted to just summarize like what exactly Trump is probably taking aim at here. So you have, there's the EPA emissions rules. There's the Department of Transportation also makes fuel economy rules. Those are kind of the sticks, right? The policies that are forcing car companies to make more efficient vehicles or else get fined. And then there's the carrots. There's, subsidies for EVs, for EV purchases, like the $7,500 EV tax credit, which you can get for a leased car or a bought one. And then there's stuff for production tax credits for producing batteries. There's all types of loans and grants that the Biden administration was giving to companies to do all sorts of things in the clean energy economy, including in EVs. And then there's charging, which is another big part of it. So it's like, they're forcing, or they're pressuring car companies to make this transition, but also feeding the demand side of it, and giving people the confidence that they can go out and buy an EV because it'll cost them a little bit less, or because they will have that charging infrastructure out there. So it was kind of this, really, I think, well thought through kind of layer, patchwork of policies that like all kind of push in different ways to this goal of pushing the auto industry toward EVs and pushing people toward EVs. And charging is a big part of it, because that's one of the big barriers that people have, at least psychological ones that people have, where they're like, where am I going to charge this thing? I need EV charging around.
Totally valid. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, totally. I think so. Totally valid. Like almost all people who buy and drive EVs now have home charging. They charge in their driveway, or in their garage like you do. And that makes owning an EV really easy. It gets a little bit dicier when you need to rely on the public infrastructure, especially kind of in the far-flung, parts of the U.S., rural areas where maybe there's not as much investment. So long way of saying, in the bipartisan infrastructure law, there were a couple of big programs that aim to support charging. One of them is NEVI, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. That's when you hear about like the $5 billion to build a federally funded charging network. That's what that is.
Yeah.
And in this executive order this week, Trump ordered a pause on all disbursement of funds from that program, another charging program, and from the IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure law generally. So right now it's paused for 90 days, and they're like, the administration is reviewing it. And then we'll see what happens after that. But as far as I understand, like from talking to people and from reading a bunch on this, a lot of the majority of that NEVI money is already kind of allocated to states, or it's at least already approved for use by states, who are then gonna who are in the process of giving contracts to projects to build out these stations. And so,
and the Biden administration, in like their last few weeks in office, like they had like this crazy fire sale, just like everything must go. Like Biden was out there with the bendy arm guy, like in a suit with dollar signs all over it. Just they got a lot of that funding out. So even if the Trump administration is trying to halt that, I think also it is legally unclear if they can. A lot's been done already, so we'll see, right?
Yeah. And on NEVI, like, and I won't get into the policy like specifics, partially because I don't fully understand them, but basically it goes out on a schedule and it doesn't need to be reapproved. And broadly speaking, most of that money, most of those billions are available for states to use, and there's not a lot, it seems, that Trump can do to stop that, barring like, passing a new law or something that makes the rest of the money unavailable or something. So we'll have to see what happens. It seems like charging money, at least a lot of it, is probably safe and available. And I think the other important thing is like you said, you said that this industry is kind of moving forward no matter what. EV demand is moving forward no matter what. I think that we have to remember that, like, when you read headlines about, Trump is pulling money or stopping money for EV charging, like, that doesn't mean that the whole industry stops functioning, right? Like, there are still tons of charging companies that are going to be building out their stations no matter what. It just means they won't get this little push, this little nudge from the federal government. And it means that, instead of putting a station out somewhere where it won't be profitable for a little while, they're going to focus on putting them in places where, like, they're going to get more use. So the point of these programs, point of NEVI, is to put chargers across American highways, right, across the U.S. And if you're a charging company that's not being subsidized by that program, maybe you won't decide to put one in the middle of like Arkansas or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's just going to change maybe slightly the pace of this rollout and where they go. But in general, like, you're going to see more charging stations be built regardless of what happens to NEVI.
Yeah, and I get why people look at this on the surface and like, why are my tax dollars paying for this? Like, we have so many other problems. Why am I subsidizing this? I think that's on its face a fair argument, but also keep in mind a few things, right? Like, China has subsidized the hell out of its auto industry and its transition to EVs. And like, they are so far ahead in the battery technology race. South Korea subsidized this in a lot of ways. That's why those cars are so advanced as they are, the Hyundais and Kias. Japan is cooking up a lot of ways to do this right now. The Europeans started doing it. They kind of lost their nerve a little bit as of lately. And I think their auto industry is really paying for it. And like, in America, like, this country did a lot to subsidize gasoline cars over a century, from building roads and highways to like keeping gasoline itself artificially cheap, and even bailing out, 2 or 3 of our automakers, over a decade ago. So like, when you have an industry that's this important to like your presence in the world and to, your economic power, like, you do things to protect it and to get ahead of it. And Tim and I, it's not our job to like stick up for car companies here, but like, there are tactical reasons this is happening. And I always think, like, just when you look at how many hybrids sold last year, how hybrid sales are booming, like, if you give people a reason to break up with gasoline and make it easy on them to do it, they're going to do it. And I think that this administration is going to have to decide, like, does it want to be a part of like the future that's happening everywhere, or are we just going to, is the answer to everything going to be like Chevy Tahoe,
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they've already made that decision based on these executive orders. It seems like that decision has been made. We'll have to see like how it all shakes out in reality, because all these programs that we're talking about that they're trying to stop, they're going to need Congress to change a lot of that. They're going to need to make new rules. It's not going to be that. It's not as straightforward as a stroke of a pen saying, okay, we're going to eliminate the EV tax credit, right? There's going to be a lot of push and pull here. But I think one of the big things that that people are talking about and that I get questions about in my personal life is like, okay, how does Elon Musk's relationship to Trump factor into this? Because you see the Trump, the White House basically wanting to stop EV progress, slow EV progress. And then you have, one of his biggest backers is the guy who basically birthed the EV movement in the U.S. Like,
and globally,
the biggest EV company.
Credit where it's due. Like Tesla, I think, kicked that off globally.
And globally. Yeah, they're a leader. So, why do you think that our buddy in chief, or whatever people call him, the co-president, why do you think he's okay with all this anti-EV policy coming out.
Oh man, like I tell you, these guys are they're kind of made for each other in a lot of ways. Like they're both very unpredictable. They don't talk to the press, certainly. So it's like it's hard to know what they're going to do until they're going to do it. I my best guess, in Elon Musk's case, is that he looked at the EV race in China, saw that like they have like 20 Teslas waiting to kick some ass, and he's like, there's no way we can fight all of them. We're cooked. Our future is going to be AI and autonomous driving. Like we're going to put all of our eggs into that basket. And that's what he cares about. That's what he posts about, among other things, on his social media channel, on X. I think he sees the future as like, it's like AI. He's like, look, it's like EVs are going to happen regardless. What he's focused on especially is artificial intelligence and autonomous driving. Like, I think that's where his top priority lies. And he's like, Tesla's going to be fine long term. But I don't know. I don't know what's in the guy's mind or heart. I'm not sure anybody does anymore. But when you look at Tesla's emphasis as a company, it's AI and robotaxi. So I think that's where he sees a way to clear a path there. So I don't know. What's your theory on that dynamic, Tim? Like, what do you think?
No, I think that's a really good point. I think that's probably true. I don't know. I think that when it comes to specific things, like you can look at the charger funding and like NEVI, and Tesla has been awarded a lot of that money, and it's like, I don't know. I think that perhaps it's just it's a nice bonus for a company like Tesla, but it's not something that it necessarily needs, and that might be the same case for the EV tax credit. Like, I don't know. I can't get inside of Elon Musk's head. I don't know exactly why he would be like specifically campaigning and backing the rollback of these policies, but I can understand that maybe there are smaller charging companies or less developed EV companies that desperately need the subsidies, and he's like, it's like it would be nice to have a little bit of to have some of that installation cost covered or some of that purchase price covered, but like it's not going to make or break Tesla. So
yeah,
I don't know. That's the best rationalization I can give, I guess.
Yeah, I think he's gonna set up Tesla to and his companies to win out in the end, like regardless here. So I just always assume that's kind of the play. But Tesla is certainly not the only EV maker out there. We could shift gears a little bit, because when it comes to Trump and Elon, it's like you don't know until you know. But we're going to be following it closely this year.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about some news out of another EV maker that came out last week, which is Polestar, the Sino-Swedish electric performance brand that's had has put out two really cool cars in the last 5 years, but has not had a great run lately. Polestar, for those of you who don't know, is owned by the Geely Group. It's kind of a spin, which is a huge Chinese conglomerate that also owns Volvo, Lotus, and a bunch of like Chinese brands that are actually doing some really cool stuff in this space. They got spun out of Volvo 2 years ago, and like the Polestar 2 sedan is kind of it's always like a staff favorite. It's always done really well in reviews. Like it's a great EV, but it's a sedan, and sedans in an SUV world can only do so much. So like their sales have been kind of terrible last few years, and end of last year they got a new CEO. His name is trying to pronounce this correctly here. Michael Loscheller.
Good luck.
Loeffler, I believe. Former Opel guy, and and he's trying to get this brand back on track, and had a big event this past week called the Polestar Annual Business Update, and we got a lot of new car news out of it too. And we know Polestar needs the help. Tim, do you want to run through just how the numbers look and what Loscheller said about what's coming up?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Polestar was looking like I remember back a few years ago, things were looking really quite rosy for Polestar. Like their sales were growing really well year over year, and that kind of has tapered off the last couple of years. So they sold in 2024. They sold just under 45,000 cars globally, and that's down from the year before and the year before that. That's down from 2023. and down from 2022.
I'm
So,
wincing there because
yeah.
just like know that that's what Polestar sold globally. Last year was 44,851 in the whole world. Rivian sold over 50,000 EVs just in the United States. And those are quite a bit more expensive than your average Polestar 2. So like this brand is kind of like really needs like a shot of adrenaline, you know?
Yeah, and it's like they kind of remind me a little bit of Lucid, right?
Yeah.
It's this brand that has really great design, but nobody knows what it is. Like,
Yeah.
They're different companies, but like the Polestar 2 looks great. It's like this, they have this Volvo Scandinavian kind of design. They're good cars, but like people see them driving down the street and they're like, "What's that?" And they just don't follow up, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't really like say Polestar on it in a major way. It just has like a kind of cryptic logo on the back, and it's like, I don't know. I think they need some brand help.
No, and if the bosses ever greenlight the InsideEvs merch store that I want to start, it's gonna be a bumper sticker for Polestar owners that says it's like a Volvo, and we'll just sell those and like, you're welcome, guys. Like I just helped you out. But yeah, they did a lot with the one car they had for a long time. But there's kind of light at the end of the tunnel now. They have the Polestar 3 SUV, which is like a cousin of the Volvo EX90. That's on sale right now. Later this year, we'll get the Polestar 4. This kind of like tall four-door sedan with like coupe roof, and it doesn't have a back window at all. It has you just use a camera because you don't need a back window. And like the horsepower specs are insane.
I don't know if I'll get used to that part, but
yeah, I don't know. It's really out there. It's made in South Korea. The Polestar 3 SUV is also made in South Carolina. So like they don't have the problem of like their car being made in China, which was also one of the Polestar 2's problems by the end. They've got the Polestar 5, which is like this super sedan, like a Porsche Taycan coming out. Polestar 6 is like this, I don't know if it's a 2-seat or 4-seat, but it's a sports car convertible. Nobody's doing EV convertibles, but Polestar is about to. Like, hell yeah. And then the big news is like they call it the Polestar 7, which is it's like the kind of quasi Polestar 2 replacement, sort of. That's it's like a midsize SUV. Kind of sounds like a Tesla Model Y from them, which is like probably the car they should have like come out with a lot sooner. So they have some good stuff coming too. I mean, do you think that if they get these cars out, they can sort of turn it around, that company?
I don't know. I mean, I hope so for them. It's like I said, they're cool looking cars and they're good EVs. So hopefully, I do think, like you said, Tesla Model Y Fighter is what they need. The Polestar 2 was always a sedan in an SUV's world, and the 7 could fix that. They're also, in this business update, they announced that they're focusing really hard on expanding retail spaces. They're cutting costs. They're basically trying to turn this business around after a rough year. But it's going to be tough. Like the products are one thing. They're dealing with new tariffs around the world. In the U.S. and in Europe, on vehicles made in China, which some Polestars are.
So trying to get away from
dealing with, exactly. So they now make, they have a factory in America where the Polestar 3 is made. So they're working on that. There's also, we talked about this last episode or a couple episodes ago. There's this new ban on certain Chinese automotive hardware and software, basically hardware and software that deals with internet connectivity and that deals with automated driving. And it's really quite unclear how Polestar will fall under that, because it's a Chinese-owned company that makes some cars in America. So we'll have to see if they can get around that. But if not, obviously that's a big problem for them.
Yeah, last year they said like if that isn't clarified or resolved, it's like they won't be able to do business in America at all. Because from what I understand, it's like this ban on like Chinese technology. That's me doing air quotes. They're like, okay, are we talking microchips? Are we talking like lines of code? Like, do you know how much crap on your vehicle comes from China in different ways? Like, we've spent like how many decades outsourcing to that country? Like, you don't walk that back overnight. So maybe they can get some sort of clarity there on how to do business. I'll give the new CEO credit for this. The guy seems to be calling his shots. We had the story on Inside EVs today that he gave an interview to the UK's Autocar, and he basically said, like, if you're sick of Elon Musk's antics, like, come and talk to us. And he said he cited like the way Musk is weighing in on like European and German politics now. He says he finds that, quote, unacceptable, and come check out Polestar because we're making up some cool stuff. So yeah, I don't know. That's I think it's interesting that he fired that shot across the bow that directly, didn't just dance around it like everybody else does, So interesting guy.
Yeah. I mean, Elon Musk, I guess, kind of gave everybody else license to, he says whatever he wants. So these guys are like, all right, maybe I'll just say whatever I want. Like, yeah, clap back.
Yeah, it's like when we get these emails from people like, I don't like when you talk about politics. I'm like, you think we wanted to? Like, it's it's not. I didn't ask the CEO of Tesla to be posting the stuff he's posting, but here we are, man. Interesting. Good luck to Polestar. Which, by the way, the Polestar 3 does remarkably well in cold weather. We found from various tests and studies out of Europe, which is a good segue into our final segment. And I wrote a story about it this week, just kind of running the readers through like what my EV range has been like since about November when it started getting really cold. And on the EV6, I'm seeing, what most people see, which is like 25-30% less range on the car, and way less efficiency overall. If you gauge this stuff, what we consider like a good number for EV efficiency is like 4 miles per kilowatt hour, meaning like, you will drive 4 miles before your car consumes 1 kilowatt hour's worth of energy in your battery or better. Like the Lucid Air hit 5 recently, and that was like a record. So I was seeing like 3 to 4 when it was warmer out. I'm now seeing like 2.2, 2.5, 3 something if I'm lucky. But the range hit is real. But I think people need to know about that. I don't want to sugarcoat it for EV drivers, but it hasn't bothered me all that much, to be honest, like with the way I drive. So it's not been that big a deal.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's like, it's only, I guess it's not a problem if you're just driving around to the store and stuff, like getting 20-30% less range. It's fine if you're not trying to max out your 300-mile range or whatever.
Yeah, totally. And it's like what I've been telling people, because I really do think like one thing we found is that like a lot of really pro EV people don't like when we talk about this stuff. Like, don't bring up the winter range. Like, it's just going to spread the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's all people want to talk about. And the winter stuff, it is a punching bag for like anti-EV people. But like, I'd rather like buyers know what they're in for. And like, if you do what I do, you mostly just like around town trips, the occasional long jaunt, you're willing to plan ahead a little bit on your highway driving, you're probably gonna be fine. And you can charge at home, you're probably be fine. But if you're eyeing an EV and like you're somebody that lives in like, Wyoming or Nebraska or Canada or something, and like all you do is like long distance driving all the time, like, maybe this isn't the right car for you, or it's like your best only car. Maybe a hybrid is better or something for distance. So
a lot of it is just the fact that it's just heating the car, right?
Yeah.
It's like in a combustion engine car, your engine is just throwing off tons of heat that then is used to heat the car when you turn on the heat and you're driving when it's cold out. In an EV, there's no heat really produced by the motors. So you have to rely on just like a heater, like a resistive, often just a regular electric heater. And that's where a lot of that energy goes. That's where a lot of that efficiency hit takes place, is just like trying to heat up the car. And it helps basically if you have like a heat pump, which is like a more efficient way of heating the car, that'll help. If you preheat the car while it's plugged in, that helps too. And then another part of it is just that batteries don't function as well when it's super duper cold out. So when you first like pull out of your driveway and your battery is frozen, it's gonna not perform as well. So anyway, that's just the background. What were you gonna say,
Yeah.
Patrick?
This is why like I wish I had paid more attention in like high school chemistry, and it would have been more useful if I knew I was going to cover electric batteries one day. But yeah, it's just a question of like, know what you're in for. And and I don't know, I don't see it as a deal breaker, but I think that all depends. I also think it's going to get better over time, because like I just don't see this technology catching on the way it should if like these kinds of winter range losses are the norm forever, and it won't, because they're investing so much into new battery technologies like solid state batteries that in theory will not be affected by temperature changes. Everybody's racing to crack that code. We've spent 100 years in this country and globally developing better and better ICE engines, gasoline, diesel engines. We've barely scratched the surface what we can do with batteries. So like I think new innovations will come along all the time that will make this problem, if not solved entirely, then like better than it is. So I have faith. For now, just plan ahead a little bit. You'll be fine.
Yeah, wear gloves in the car.
Yeah.
Wear a scarf. That helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, it does depend. And the last thing I'll say is I'll plug. We've had a bunch of stories on this lately on the site, but there's one in particular that I'll plug, which is titled "Here's How Much These Popular EV Models Lose in the freezing in the cold," and you can see like it varies. And so something like a Tesla Model 3, super popular car, still retains about 87% of its normal range in freezing temperatures, according to this study from our friends at Recurrent. So it's not like a death sentence for these cars in a lot of cases. A lot of them still do pretty darn well.
Yeah, but to their credit, like the Tesla Model X and S they have 89% battery in the freezing cold. Like that's excellent. My Kia on their list is 80%, which is like, it's kind of mid-pack, honestly, compared to the rest. Could be better, but like this stuff is getting better. And as that study noted, if you have LFP batteries, which Tesla uses those, and like the Ford Mustang Mach-E, it's kind of like a cheaper type of battery. They're more resilient to temperature changes. Yeah. They tend to not have as much maximum range overall, but they're tougher and easier to produce. It can take this kind of punishment. So again, wait for new chemistries to come out that I think will make this problem a little bit easier to deal with as this technology catches on. Now it's time for Plus Minus, our segment where we talk about who's up and who's down in the EV world this week. Tim, who you got?
I mean, I guess it's a plus for the new president. It's a minus for EV, the EV and kind of clean energy world overall. So it's kind of hard for me to pick anything else but that. Like, there's a lot that we didn't mention in our opening segment about what his administration is trying to do to slow down renewable energy. He pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement. It's not looking great for clean energy and for the climate transition in general over the next 4 years. So that's my minus for the week.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. It's like there's many other aspects of like a clean energy transition that are going to take, I think, a bigger hit that don't have like this global trend behind it, and that's going to be unfortunate to see. I hope that there's a business case that could be made to support those industries, because that was also had a lot of progress the last go round. I'll let us on a positive note, or try to. My plus of the week is actually Volvo. Speaking of Polestar and Scandinavian cold cars, as of this year, Volvo, it took them a long time to get there. Lots of delays and challenges and issues with tariffs, but Volvo has 3 EVs on the market. The EX30, which is made in China and really took a ways to get here. The EX40, which used to be the XC40, and now the EX90, like their high-tech electric flagship. It was kind of a quasi XC90 replacement, and they kept that around, but that thing looks really slick. And they have a bunch of hybrid and plug-in hybrid offerings at Volvo too. So like definitely like an automaker that's like seems to be doing the right thing, and I think they've got a good year ahead. And I think that starting price for the EX30 went up to like 46 grand. It's supposed to be 35, but like because of the Chinese tariffs, they can't sell the cheap version here anymore. They're going to try and make it in Europe, and maybe they will. But I think for all you're getting for that car, that's still a decent price. And I think we're going to see them everywhere because they sell like freaking crazy all over the rest of the world. And I hope it does well here too. I'm excited to finally drive one. I tried to buy one like over a year ago, and then And then Joe Biden's tariffs took it off the map for me. So, but now it's here. We did it, Joe.
Too soon.
Too soon, huh? Yeah. Well, that's it for us this week. Thanks for listening to the Plugged In Podcast from Inside EVs. We'll be back next Friday. Today's show is produced by Michael Perkins and is brought to you by the Motorsport Network.
Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, leave us a review, and tell a friend to tune in. It will really help us out. And if you liked what you heard, you can find all our EV coverage at InsideEvs.com. See you next time.
Thanks so much.